The Duke looked fondly at his 23-year-old wife, proudly posing with her first son for a ceremonial portrait. The warm southern sun played in her golden brown hair and in the folds of her luxurious brocade dress. All Florence knew that Cosimo I adored Eleonora and never cheated on her, which was so uncharacteristic of temperamental men of the Medici family. The Duke had forgotten all the favorites as soon as he married the intelligent and prolific Spaniard. He was so proud of his wife that he ordered the famous painter Veronese to paint her constantly. Eleanor or Leonor was born into a noble and wealthy family in 1522 in Spain. Her father was the Spanish grandee and famous General Pedro Alvarez de Toledo, one of the sons of the Duke of Alba, and her mother was the Marquise Maria Pimentel. Eleanor was one of the 7 children of the couple. When the girl was 10 years old, her father received the post of Viceroy of Naples from the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. The girl was brought up in an atmosphere of austerity, receiving an excellent home education. In 1535 in Naples, Eleanor met with 16-year-old Cosimo Medici. At the time, no one foresaw that this young man would become her future spouse. Cosimo served as a humble page in the retinue of his relative, Duke Alessandro of Florence. Despite the fact that they did not even talk privately, Cosimo did not forget about the charming 13-year-old girl. 2 years later, fate brought Cosimo together with the ducal throne of Florence. He represented the younger branch of the Medici family and assumed a position of power after the passing of his barren cousin, Duke Alessandro. Alessandro was assassinated by his cousin in 1537, and the assassin then fled Florence, subsequently dying. Cosimo thus became heir to the title of ruling duke, acting as one of the last members of the Medici family. Naturally, the ambitious duke needed to marry to obtain an heir and consolidate power. At first, Cosimo chose the widow of the dead Alessandro, Margaret of Austria, who was an illegitimate daughter of Emperor Charles V, but the emperor had other plans for the marriage of his daughter, and he suggested that the young duke pay attention to the daughters of the Viceroy of Naples. Since Cosimo needed an alliance with powerful Spain, he immediately agreed. The Viceroy of Naples offered Cosimo his eldest daughter, but the duke was stubborn and refused to marry Isabella. Apparently, Cosimo remembered the king's youngest daughter, the charming Eleanor, which caught his eye during a trip to Naples. Pedro Alvarez did not hesitate long and agreed to replace one daughter with another. He gave Eleonora a large dowry, and in 1539 the couple was married by proxy. Later, Eleonora decided to learn Italian in an effort to communicate more closely with her future homeland. Apparently, her brief encounter with Cosimo left an indelible impression on her heart, as records show that Eleonora was excited about her forthcoming marriage and began corresponding with her future husband. That same summer, accompanied by her brother and courtiers, the young bride traveled to Florence, where her destiny awaited her. Cosimo, full of impatience, was eager to meet the bride and even arrived in Pisa to meet her cortege. The meeting of the young couple was beautiful and both were enchanted by each other. The Florentines described Eleanor as an amazing beauty with snow-white skin. She was short in stature, with brown eyes and brown hair. In June 1539, the young people joyfully went to the wedding. The bride was 17 years old and the groom 20. So Eleanor Toledo became the Duchess of Florence. On the occasion of their wedding in Florence for several weeks were lavish celebrations. Already a year after the wedding, Eleanor gave birth to her first child, a daughter. And another year later, Francesco, the heir to the throne. Cosimo rejoiced. He showered his wife with gifts for the birth of each child. The couple created such a strong and happy union that others were amazed at their relationship. In those days, when the Italian dukes had one favorite girl succeeding another and also had many children out of wedlock, it was truly amazing. So the dynastic alliance turned into a marriage of love. The fertile duchess bore Cosimo a child almost every year. Not for nothing she chose her motto, happy fertility and chastity. Before this marriage, the Medici family was almost on the verge of extinction. Eleanor saved the situation. She gave birth to the Duke of 11 children, making the position of the dynasty unshakable. 8 children survived to adulthood, 3 daughters and 5 sons. My congratulations that the most excellent and most fortunate Lady Duchess has grown twice in body, and may God see fit that it should be a boy no less handsome and no less admirable than Don Francesco, Eleonora's eldest son, from a letter of the Italian Bishop Paolo Giovio to the pregnant Duchess Eleonora, 1544. Cosimo later nicknamed his wife with the amusing name "E hen with chickens." The couple spent an extraordinary amount of time together with their children, a rarity at a time when children were usually raised separately. While under the strict supervision of the mother, all the children received a quality education. Curiously, at first the Spaniard was treated warily and even hostile in her new homeland. But over time, the Duchess managed to win the respect not only of the courtiers, but also of the people. Eleanor was so amazingly active that even numerous pregnancies did not interfere with her projects. The Duchess had a truly masculine acumen in business and excellent organizational skills. Cosimo trusted her and constantly appointed her regent during his departures and numerous military campaigns. Often the Duke consulted with his wife and on political issues. However, the Duke's rule was always characterized by despotism and even harshness. Cosimo sought to unite the lands of Tuscany under his authoritarian hand. Eleanor was characterized as an intelligent, calm and confident woman. In society she always showed restraint and behaved with high dignity. The Duchess had considerable influence on her husband and was able to calm his hot temper. She preferred to travel the country together with her husband and actively participated in hunting trips. The harmonious marriage of this fascinating couple lasted for 23 years. But the main passion of this noble lady was the development of agriculture in the duchy. Eleanor owned vast tracts of land on which grain, livestock and even bees were perfectly grown. Also with her participation, Italian silk workshops became famous. The Duchess followed fashion and wore outfits only from fabrics of local producers. This ducal couple, as true entrepreneurs, jointly increased the family's property. Eleanor actively patronized art and architecture. She hired the great artists and sculptors of the era to decorate the palaces of the Medici. At the same time, she was very religious, supported churches, donated a lot of money for the construction of temples. The dukes mostly lived in the Palazzo Vecchio. In 1549, Eleonora purchased the Pitti Palace in order to give the large family a place for summer vacations. At her behest, the palace was remodeled and the famous Boboli Gardens were arranged on its grounds so that the ducal family could enjoy walks in the shade on hot days. Curiously, Eleanor had a good knowledge of pharmacology. She passed on many family recipes for medicines and cosmetics she brought back from Spain to court physicians and Florentine apothecaries. Over time, numerous childbirths did undermine Eleanor's health. Around the age of 30, she contracted tuberculosis, after which she became frequently ill. And the death of the Duchess was tragic. Eleanor, along with her 2 sons, 19-year-old Giovanni and 15-year-old Garzia, died in December 1562. The Duchess had accompanied her husband and sons on one of their journeys through the country. During a trip to Pisa, the 3 of them contracted malaria and died a few weeks apart. The last to die was Eleanor, who before this had selflessly nursed her dying sons. The Duchess was only 40 years of age. The Duke was stunned by the death of his beloved wife and children. This sudden death of 3 representatives of the dynasty at once caused numerous rumors that they were poisoned. Then there was another version that the younger brother stabbed the older brother, after which he was killed by his father. And Eleanor, allegedly unable to bear it, died of grief. Both of these versions were so popular in Italy that they were even set forth in literary works. But in the 2000s, the exhumation of the remains took place, and modern expertise finally confirmed that Eleonora, Giovanni and Garcia died of malaria. 3 years after the death of his wife, the Duke had a favorite, Eleonora Albizzi, who gave Cosimo 2 more children. And in 1570 the Duke married again. His wife became an Italian aristocrat, Camilla Martelli, but the marriage was morganatic. The Duke refused to give his second wife the title of Duchess of Florence. A daughter was born to this union. The relationship between Camilla and the Duke's children from the first marriage was poor. Eleanor's children could not tolerate the young stepmother. Cosimo soon became Grand Duke of Tuscany, uniting the Tuscan lands into a single domain. It's a pity Eleonora didn't live to see his triumph. The Duke died in 1574 at the age of 54. The new ruling Duke was his eldest son by Eleanor, Francesco. True, years later he was poisoned, presumably by his younger brother Ferdinando, who quickly took his brother's place on the throne of Florence. In general, the fates of all the children of Eleanor Toledo formed quite dramatic. There were early deaths from disease and insidious poisoning and murder out of jealousy, a whole plot for detectives. But 4 of her children were able to leave offspring. Eleanor's most famous descendant was her granddaughter, Queen Mary de Medici of France.